They say love is blind, but in Iolanthe Isadora's case, it was just plain stupid. He thought he was the king of the world, a self-made real estate mogul who could trade his faithful wife of 10 years for a younger, flashier model without a second thought. He threw her out on the street with nothing but the clothes on her back, laughing as he signed the divorce papers. But he didn't check the fine print, and he certainly didn't check her background. Because the woman he humiliated wasn't just a housewife. She was the hidden heiress to a fortune that could buy his entire life 10 times over. And when she comes back, she isn't coming for alimony. She's coming for blood. This is the story of how Iolanthe Isadora lost everything. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel in New York City were vibrating with the low hum of gossip. It was the 10th wedding anniversary of Iolanthe Isadora, the CEO of Isadora Heights Development, and his quiet, unassuming wife Jezebel. But Jezebel wasn't sitting at the head table. She was standing near the kitchen doors, clutching a tray of appetizers. She wasn't a waitress, but she might as well have been. Iolanthe had insisted she help out the staff because the service was lagging, despite her wearing a vintage navy gown that had been her mother's. At the head table, Iolanthe sat with his arm draped casually over the back of a velvet chair. Occupying that chair was Jessica Vane. Jessica was 24, a former Instagram model turned brand consultant for Iolanthe's company. She wore a dress that cost more than the car. Jezebel drove a shimmering scarlet number that screamed for attention. "Iolanthe, darling," Jessica purred loud enough for the board of directors to hear. "This wine is dreadful. Did Jezebel pick it out? It tastes like vinegar." Iolanthe laughed, a booming, arrogant sound that echoed off the marble walls. "Don't mind her taste, Jess. Jezebel buys her wine from the discount bin at the grocery store. She has let's call it a rustic palate." The table erupted in sycophantic laughter. Men like board member Thomas Klein and CFO Greg Anderson chuckled nervously, eyeing the kitchen door, where Jezebel stood humiliated. They knew Jezebel. They knew she was the one who remembered their wives' birthdays, the one who stayed up until 4 a.m. proofreading Iolanthe's contracts because he was too drunk to do it himself. Jezebel gripped the silver tray until her knuckles turned white. She walked over to the table, her face burning. "Happy anniversary, Iolanthe," she whispered, placing a glass of water down near him. Iolanthe didn't look up. He was busy feeding a strawberry to Jessica. "Not now, Jezebel. Can't you see we're discussing business? It's our 10th anniversary," Jezebel said, her voice trembling slightly. "You promised we would dance." Jessica covered her mouth, feigning shock. "Oh, honey. Did you really think he meant that? Look at you. You look like a librarian who got lost on the way to a funeral. Iolanthe needs someone who represents the brand." Iolanthe finally turned to look at his wife. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth they held a decade ago, when they were both broke university students, sharing instant noodles in a studio apartment in Queens. "She's right, Jezebel," Iolanthe said, his voice flat. "Look around. This is the big leagues. You're holding me back. Honestly, having you here is embarrassing. Why don't you just go home? Take the subway. I need the driver to take Jessica to the after party." The room went silent. Even the waiters paused. Jezebel looked at Iolanthe. Really looked at him. She saw the grey hairs she had dyed for him, the wrinkles she had smoothed with expensive creams she bought with her allowance, the suit she had picked out. "You want me to leave?" Jezebel asked softly. "I want you to disappear." Iolanthe sneered, emboldened by the alcohol and Jessica's hand on his thigh. I'm filing the papers tomorrow. I'm done carrying dead weight. I built this company. I made them millions. You just existed." Jezebel took a deep breath. For a second, the air around her seemed to change. Her posture straightened. The slump of the tired housewife vanished, replaced by a terrifying grace. "As you wish, Iolanthe," she said. Her voice wasn't sad. It was final. "But remember this moment. Remember that you asked for this." She turned and walked out of the ballroom. She didn't look back. She didn't take the subway. She walked 2 blocks to the corner of Fifth Avenue, pulled a burner phone from her clutch, a phone Iolanthe didn't know existed, and dialed a number. "It's time," she said into the receiver. "Activate Protocol Vi. I'm coming home." The next morning, Iolanthe woke up with a hangover and a smirk. Jessica was asleep next to him in the master suite of his penthouse, overlooking Central Park. He felt lighter, free. He had finally cut the anchor loose. He went downstairs expecting to find Jezebel crying in the kitchen or begging him to reconsider. He had his lawyer, a shark named Arthur Pendleton, ready to bully her into a meager settlement. But the kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was cold. He walked into the living room. "Jezebel, stop hiding. We need to talk about when you're moving out." Silence. He went to the guest room where Jezebel had been sleeping for the past 6 months since he started his affair. The bed was made. The closet was open. It was empty. Not just empty of clothes. It was scrubbed. There were no bobby pins on the dresser, no half-read books on the nightstand, no smell of her lavender perfume. He checked the safe in his study. His cash was there. Her jewelry, cheap pieces he had bought her over the years, was neatly stacked on the desk, along with her wedding ring and the keys to the 2015 Honda Civic she drove. Beside the ring was a note. It wasn't a tear-stained letter of regret. It was a post-it note. "The garbage has taken itself out. Good luck with the audit." "Audit?" Iolanthe scoffed, crumpling the note. "She's delusional." He called Arthur Pendleton. "Artie, she's gone. Left her keys and everything. Make sure you change the locks. I don't want her crawling back in here when she runs out of money. Consider it done, Rich." Arthur laughed. "By the way, did you check the joint accounts just to be safe?" Iolanthe logged into his banking app. He expected to see the usual balance. The joint checking account had $0. Iolanthe's heart stopped for a second. Then he surged with rage. "That thief! She took the 50 grand. But then he looked closer at the transaction history. She hadn't transferred the money to herself. She had donated it. $25,000 to the Stray Dog Shelter of New York. $25,000 to the Association for Narcissistic Abuse Survivors. "She gave my money to dogs and crybabies," Iolanthe screamed, throwing his phone against the couch. He wasn't worried, though. 50,000 was a drop in the bucket. He had millions in his corporate accounts and offshore holdings. He was Iolanthe Isadora. He was untouchable. 3 weeks passed. Iolanthe moved Jessica in fully. She redecorated the penthouse in garish gold and leopard print. She fired the housekeeper Maria, who had been with them for years, because Maria looked at her quietly. Life was a party, until the first domino fell. It started on a Tuesday. Iolanthe walked into Isadora Heights development, ready to sign a massive deal with a contractor for the new Brooklyn skyscraper project. His secretary, a new hire named Tiffany Jessica, had insisted he fire. The old one looked pale. "Mr. Isadora," she squeaked. "The bank called. They declined the line of credit for the construction materials. What? Iolanthe stormed into his office. Get me the bank manager. Get me Steve from Chase. He got Steve on the line. Steve, what is the meaning of this? I have assets covering that loan 3 times over. I'm sorry, Mr. Isadora. Steve's voice was icy. But there's been a flagging on your collateral, the land for the Brooklyn project. It appears you don't own it. I bought that land 5 years ago, Iolanthe roared. I have the deed. We checked the deed, Iolanthe, Steve said. The land is held by a holding company called Aurora Borealis LLC. You had a lease agreement with them, with an option to buy which expired yesterday. You never exercised the option. Iolanthe froze. He remembered now. Jezebel usually handled the calendar and the renewals. She would put a file on his desk with a sticky note saying, "Sign this or we lose the land." She hadn't put a file on his desk this month. Who owns Aurora Borealis? Iolanthe demanded, sweat beading on his forehead. It's a blind trust, Steve said. But the lawyers representing them just sent a notice of eviction. You have 48 hours to vacate the construction site. Iolanthe slammed the phone down. Jezebel, he hissed. She knew the date was coming up, and she didn't remind me. Bad news, babe. Jessica walked in, holding a shopping bag from Gucci. I need your black card. The one you gave me got declined at Saks. Not now, Jessica, Iolanthe snapped. He didn't know it yet, but the land was just the beginning. Jezebel hadn't just been his wife. For 10 years she had been his shadow COO. She was the one who smoothed over his rude emails to investors. She was the one who noticed the accounting errors. She was the one who maintained relationships with the city zoning board. Without her, the invisible glue holding his empire together had dissolved. And the winds of a hurricane were starting to blow. Iolanthe grabbed his coat. I need to find her. She's probably staying at her sister's in New Jersey. I'm going to drag her back here and make her fix this mess. He drove to the address he had for Jezebel's sister, a small, run-down house in a working-class neighborhood. He banged on the door. A strange man opened it. Yeah. Where is Jezebel? Where is Linda? Iolanthe demanded. Lady, I bought this house 6 months ago, the man said. The previous owner, Linda, she moved to Switzerland. Said her sister got her a job. Switzerland? Iolanthe stepped back. Linda was a cashier at a diner. How could she move to Switzerland? His phone buzzed. It was an email from a private investigator he had hired an hour ago. Subject: Jezebel Isadora report. Mr. Isadora. I can't find a trace of a Jezebel Jenkins existing before 2012. Her social security number leads to a dead end. It's like she was created out of thin air the year she met you. But I did find one hit on facial recognition from an airport camera in Zurich yesterday. Iolanthe opened the attachment. It was a grainy photo of Jezebel. But she wasn't wearing her usual cardigans. She was wearing a tailored white power suit, oversized sunglasses, and she was stepping off a private jet. The tail number on the jet was registered to the Van der Hoeven Group. Iolanthe dropped the phone. The Van der Hoeven Group wasn't just a company, it was a dynasty. They owned half of the shipping lines in Europe, 3 pharmaceutical companies, and significant real estate in Manhattan. They were old money, the kind of money that whispered and governments listened. No, Iolanthe whispered. That's impossible. Jezebel coupons for tuna fish. But deep in his gut, a cold, hard stone of dread began to form. He had kicked a puppy, only to realize it was the favorite pet of a wolf. Iolanthe sat in his leather executive chair, the silence of his office deafening. The view of the Manhattan skyline, usually a source of pride, now felt like a mocking audience. The report from the private investigator lay on his desk like a radioactive isotope. Van der Hoven. He typed the name into Google. The results were intimidating. The Van der Hoven family wasn't just rich. They were old-world architects of the global economy. Dutch shipping magnates turned global financiers. Net worth incalculable. He scrolled through the image results. There were photos of an older man, Henrik van der Hoven, a stern-looking patriarch, and then a few photos from 12 years ago of a young woman, Serafina van der Hoven. The photos were blurry, taken by paparazzi from a distance. She was young, maybe 20. She looked uncomfortable in the spotlight. But the eyes... Iolanthe zoomed in. Even through the graininess, he recognized the shape. It was Jezebel. "She played me," Iolanthe whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. "For 10 years she played the poor little orphan. Why to laugh at me?" Just then the office door banged open. Jessica stormed in tears, streaming down her face, ruining her spray tan. "Iolanthe, this is unacceptable," she screamed, throwing her iPhone onto his desk. "I went to the spa and they cut up my membership card. They said the account is frozen." "Do you know how embarrassing that is? I had cucumber slices on my eyes when they told me to leave." Iolanthe looked at her, really looked at her for the second time. The shrill voice, the obsession with trivialities, the complete lack of awareness that the building was burning down around them. "Jessica, shut up," Iolanthe said, rubbing his temples. "Excuse me." Jessica gasped. "You don't talk to me like that. I am the face of Isadora Heights." "You are a liability," Iolanthe snapped. "The bank is pulling our funding. The Brooklyn land deal is dead, and my ex-wife turns out to be a billionaire who is currently dismantling my life remotely. So unless you have a degree in corporate law hidden under that spray tan, get out." Jessica stared at him, mouth agape, then grabbed her phone and stormed out. "I'm going to stay at the plaza. Call me when you're done being a jerk. Good luck paying for it," Iolanthe yelled after her. He was alone again. He needed a plan. If Jezebel or Serafina was behind this, she was vindictive. But Iolanthe was a businessman. He believed everything was a negotiation. He just needed leverage. He called Arthur Pendleton, his lawyer. "Artie, listen to me. Delay the divorce filing. If she has money, real money, I'm entitled to half of it, right? We were married for 10 years. No prenup." Arthur chuckled nervously on the other end. "Rich about that? I've been trying to reach you all morning. We have a problem." "What problem?" "I received a packet from a law firm this morning. Blackwood and Associates." "Mustn't." Iolanthe froze. Blackwood and Associates was the firm that represented the president and half of Wall Street. They didn't take divorce cases. They took wars. "They sent over a document," Arthur continued, his voice losing its usual cocky swagger. "It's a declaration of separate assets. Remember that little paper you signed 3 years into the marriage? The one Jezebel said was just to protect you from her student loan debt." Iolanthe vaguely remembered. He was drunk on scotch that night, celebrating his first $1 million. Jezebel had come to him with a document looking worried. She said she didn't want her debt to affect his credit score. He had laughed, signed it without reading, and told her she was a good little wife. "I signed it. So what?" "Well," Arthur cleared his throat. It wasn't about student loans. It was a waiver. You legally waived any claim to her assets, past, present, or future, in exchange for her waiving any claim to yours. It's ironclad, Iolanthe. You can't touch her money. But here's the kicker. Because you signed that she has no liability for your debts either. And since she was the guarantor on your initial business loans under a shell corporation, what are you saying, Arthur? I'm saying she pulled the guarantee this morning. The banks are calling in the loans immediately. All $40 million of them. If you can't pay by close of business, Friday, Isadora Heights enters receivership. Iolanthe dropped the phone. It was Wednesday. He had 48 hours. He spent the next day running around the city like a madman. He called every favor. He called the friends he had bought expensive dinners for. Sorry, rich bad timing. I'd love to help, but liquidity is tight. I heard you're in trouble with the Van der Hovens. I can't get involved in that. The name had already spread. The wolves smelled blood. By Thursday evening, Iolanthe was sitting in a dive bar, loosening his tie. He was ruined. The penthouse would be seized, his cars, his reputation. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? He answered, his voice slurred. Mr. Isadora. A crisp British voice spoke. I am calling on behalf of Apex Global Ventures. We understand you are facing a temporary liquidity crisis. Iolanthe sat up straight. Who is this? My name is Mr. Thorne. My employer has been watching your career with interest. We believe Isadora Heights has value despite your recent missteps. We are willing to offer a bailout. A bailout? Iolanthe felt a surge of hope. How much? Enough to clear the debts and keep the Brooklyn project alive. But my employer requires a face-to-face meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9:00 a.m. at the Van der Hoven Tower Penthouse Suite. Iolanthe's stomach dropped. Van der Hoven Tower, why there? Because that is where Apex Global is headquartered, Mr. Thorne said smoothly. Do we have a deal? Iolanthe didn't have a choice. I'll be there. He hung up. Was this Jezebel? Was she going to save him? Maybe she still loved him. Maybe this was all just a lesson to humble him. Yes, that had to be it. She was Serafina van der Hoven, but she was still his Jezebel. She was the woman who rubbed his back when he was sick. She wouldn't destroy him. She just wanted an apology. He went home showered, shaved, and put on his best suit. He rehearsed his apology in the mirror. He would be charming, remorseful. He would win her back. The Van der Hoven Tower made Iolanthe's office building look like a strip mall. It was a sleek needle of black glass piercing the clouds of midtown Manhattan. Iolanthe arrived at 8:45 a.m. He was escorted by security, huge men in suits that cost more than Iolanthe's car, to a private elevator. There were no buttons. It simply ascended, ears popping as they shot up 90 floors. The doors opened into a conference room that spanned the entire floor. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass. The table was made of obsidian. Sitting at the far end of the table was a woman. Her back was to him. She was looking out at the city. She wore a crimson suit, sharp and tailored. Her hair, once usually tied in a messy bun, cascaded down her back in glossy waves. Standing next to her was a tall, severe-looking man holding a tablet. Mr. Thorne, presumably. Miss Isadora, Thorne said. Please sit. Iolanthe sat. He felt small. Is she the investor? The chair swiveled around. It was Jezebel. But it wasn't the Jezebel he knew. The Jezebel he knew had soft eyes and a nervous smile. This woman's eyes were like shattered diamonds, hard, brilliant, and cutting. Her makeup was flawless. She radiated a terrifying amount of power. "Hello, Iolanthe," she said. Her voice was the same, but the cadence was different. It commanded attention. "Jezebel." Iolanthe breathed out, putting on his practiced sad smile. "God, I've missed you. Look, I know I messed up. I was an idiot, a fool. The stress of the business, it got to me. But we can fix this. I love you." Jezebel didn't blink. She didn't smile. She simply tapped a finger on the obsidian table. "You love me?" she asked, her tone conversational. "That's interesting, because 3 days ago you told me I was dead weight. You said I was embarrassing. You humiliated me in front of your board to impress a girl who thinks the capital of France is Zara." "I was drunk," Iolanthe pleaded. "I didn't mean it." "You meant every word," Jezebel said calmly. "But let's correct the record. I am not Jezebel Isadora. I never was. My name is Serafina van der Hoven." "I know," Iolanthe said, leaning forward. "And I don't care about the money, Jezebel. Serafina. I care about us." Jezebel laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Oh, Iolanthe, stop acting. It's beneath you. You're here because you're broke. You're here because you realized the librarian you married was the only reason you weren't living in a cardboard box." She stood up and walked toward him. The click of her heels echoed in the silent room. "Let me tell you a story, Iolanthe. 12 years ago, I walked away from this life. The billions, the boardrooms, the fake smiles. I wanted to know if it was possible to be loved for me. Not my last name. Not my inheritance. Just me." She circled him like a shark. "I met you. You were ambitious, hungry, and a little rough around the edges. I fell in love with your drive. I thought, here is a man who will build something with me. So I became Jezebel. I cooked your meals. I cleaned your house. I balanced your books. I gave you 10 years of my life. I used my inheritance to anonymously guarantee your loans because no bank would touch you. I bought the land for your projects through shell companies, so you could feel like a big man negotiating deals." Iolanthe turned pale. You did all that? Everything?" she hissed, leaning down so her face was inches from his. "Every success you ever had was because I allowed it, and I was happy to do it. I didn't want the credit. I just wanted your loyalty." She straightened up and walked back to her chair. "And then you got bored. You decided I wasn't shiny enough. You cheated on me. You mocked me. And finally you discarded me." "I'm sorry," Iolanthe whispered, head in his hands. "Apologies are for people who spill wine on a rug, Iolanthe," she said. "Betrayal requires a different currency." She gestured to Mr. Thorne, who slid a thick document across the table toward Iolanthe. "This is the proposal," Jezebel said. Iolanthe looked at the document. "Acquisition agreement. Apex Global, my private equity firm, will purchase Isadora Heights Development," Jezebel explained. "We will assume all debts and liabilities. You will avoid bankruptcy. You will avoid the fraud charges that the SEC is currently preparing regarding your creative accounting on the Midtown project. Yes, I know about that too. You're buying the company?" Iolanthe asked, hope returning. "So I stay on as CEO?" Jezebel smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "No, you will resign immediately. You will sign over 100% of your shares. In exchange, I will give you a payout." "How much?" Iolanthe asked. He was doing the math. The company was valued at $50 million before the crash. Even in a fire sale, he could walk away with $10 million. "Turn to page 30, Jezebel said. Iolanthe flipped the pages. He found the figure. Purchase price $1. Iolanthe choked. "You're joking." "It's a generous offer," Jezebel said coldly. "Considering the debt is $40 million, I'm technically paying $40,001 for a pile of garbage. You walk away with no debt, no prison time, and $1. I won't sign it." Iolanthe slammed his fist on the table. "I built that company. You built nothing." Jezebel's voice rose, cracking like a whip. "I built it. And if you don't sign, I will let the bank foreclose tomorrow. The SEC will raid your office on Monday. You will go to federal prison for bank fraud for at least 5 years. And while you are rotting in a cell, Jessica will be sleeping with the next guy who has a black card." She checked her diamond-encrusted watch. "You have 2 minutes to decide, Iolanthe. My pen is on the table." Iolanthe looked at the pen. He looked at Jezebel. He saw zero hesitation in her eyes. She wasn't bluffing. She was Serafina van der Hoven, and she could crush him like an insect. He thought about prison. He thought about the shame. With a shaking hand, he picked up the pen. He signed his name. Iolanthe Isadora. He pushed the paper back. Mr. Thorne reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp single $1 bill. He placed it on the obsidian table. "Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Isadora," Thorne said. "Get out," Jezebel said. She didn't look at him. She had already turned her chair back to the window, watching the city she owned. Iolanthe grabbed the dollar bill. He stumbled to the elevator. As the doors closed, the last thing he saw was the back of the woman he had thrown away, sitting on a throne he could never reach. But the nightmare wasn't over. Iolanthe thought he had hit rock bottom. He was wrong. Because Jessica was waiting in the lobby, and she had seen the news alert on her phone. The elevator ride down from the 91st floor felt like a descent into hell. Iolanthe stared at his reflection in the polished brass doors. His tie was slightly crooked. His face was pale. He held the crumpled $1 bill in his fist like a lifeline. When the doors slid open, the lobby of the Van der Hoven Tower was bustling. Tourists were taking photos of the waterfall in the atrium. Businessmen were rushing to meetings. And there, sitting on a velvet bench near the revolving doors, was Jessica. Iolanthe felt a flicker of relief. At least he wasn't alone. Jessica was annoying, yes, and shallow, but she was his. They could start over. He was a talented developer. He could get a job, build a new company, maybe something smaller. They would struggle for a bit, but they would have each other. He walked over to her. She was furiously typing on her phone, her Louis Vuitton bag perched on her lap. "Jessica." Iolanthe said, his voice raspy. She looked up. Her expression wasn't one of concern. It was one of annoyance, mixed with pity, the kind of look one gives to a homeless person asking for change. "Oh, you're done," she said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "Finally. I've been waiting for 20 minutes. It didn't go well," Iolanthe admitted, trying to keep his voice steady. "Jezebel. She's the owner. She bought the company. I'm out, Jess. I lost Isadora Heights." He expected a scream. He expected tears. Instead, Jessica let out a short, sharp sigh. "I know, Iolanthe. It's all over TMZ. Real estate tycoon Iolanthe Isadora signs over Empire For $1 to billionaire ex-wife. You're trending, but not in a good way. Iolanthe felt the blood drain from his face. It's already out. Serafina's PR team moves fast, Jessica said, checking her reflection in her phone screen. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. I need the keys to the penthouse. The penthouse? Iolanthe blinked. Jess, we have to move out. The company owned the penthouse. It belongs to Jezebel now. We have to find a hotel until I can liquidate some. Well, I don't have anything to liquidate. But we'll figure it out. Jessica laughed. It was a cruel sound, devoid of the bubbly charm she used to fake. Oh, honey, there is no we. I need the keys because I need to get my stuff before they change the locks. I have an Uber Black waiting. You're leaving me? Iolanthe asked, his voice cracking. Now, when I've lost everything. Iolanthe, look at yourself, Jessica sneered, stepping closer. You're 42 years old, bankrupt, and the laughingstock of New York. Do you really think I was dating you for your sparkling personality? You were a credit card with legs, and now the card is declined. I left my wife for you, Iolanthe shouted, causing a security guard to look over. I gave you everything. You left your wife because you're a narcissist who needed an ego boost, Jessica corrected him coldly. Don't put that on me. I just seized an opportunity, and now the opportunity is gone. Just then, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb outside the glass doors. The window rolled down. Driving the car was Greg Anderson, Iolanthe's former CFO, the man who had laughed the loudest at Jezebel's rustic palate at the anniversary dinner. "Ready, Jess?" Greg called out, grinning. Iolanthe stared at them, horrified. "Greg, you're with him?" Greg kept his job, Jessica said with a shrug. Apparently he cut a deal with the new management. He's the new VP of operations. Smart man. Unlike you. She snatched the penthouse key from Iolanthe's limp hand. "Goodbye, Iolanthe. Don't call me. I blocked your number 10 minutes ago." She strutted out the door, her heels clicking on the marble. She got into the Mercedes, and Greg didn't even look at Iolanthe as he peeled away into traffic. Iolanthe stood alone in the lobby. He felt dizzy. "Sir," a security guard was standing next to him. "You can't loiter here. This is private property." I used to be a CEO," Iolanthe mumbled. "Yeah, and I used to be a linebacker." "Move it along, pal," the guard said, guiding him toward the door. Iolanthe stumbled out onto the sidewalk. The noise of Manhattan hit him like a physical blow. Sirens honking, people shouting. It had started to rain, a cold, grey drizzle. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call a car service, then remembered his corporate account was suspended. He opened his banking app. Balance $0. Credit cards frozen. He checked his wallet. He had no cash, just the $1 bill Mr. Thorne had given him. He looked at the bill. George Washington stared back at him unimpressed. Iolanthe needed to get to his sister's house in Queens. A cab would cost $50. An Uber would be $40. He looked down the street at the subway entrance. The N train. He hadn't taken the subway in 15 years. He used to joke that the subway was for people who gave up on life. He pulled his collar up against the rain and walked toward the stairs. He went to the ticket machine. A single ride was $2.75. He only had $1. Iolanthe Isadora, the man who had ordered $500 bottles of wine just to pour them out, stood in front of the MTA machine, realizing he was too poor to even leave the scene of his humiliation. He had to jump the turnstile. He looked around, waited for the station agent to look away, and awkwardly vaulted over the bar. He snagged his suit jacket, his $3,000 Armani jacket on the metal. It ripped with a loud tear. He landed on the other side, breathing hard. A teenager in a hoodie laughed at him. "Nice move, Grandpa." Iolanthe slumped onto the dirty plastic bench on the platform. He put his head in his hands. The smell of stale urine and ozone filled his nose. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years he saw Jezebel's face. Not the powerful Seraphina in the boardroom, but Jezebel. The way she used to look at him when he came home late, tired but triumphant. She would heat up dinner for him. She would listen to his rants about contractors. She was the only person in the world who had ever loved him for free. And he had sold her for $1. Months later, the alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. It wasn't the gentle, ambient bird sounds of his old iPhone. It was a harsh, metallic rattle from a cheap plastic clock he bought at a pawn shop. Iolanthe groaned and rolled off the mattress. It was on the floor. He didn't have a bed frame yet. He was living in a basement studio in Astoria, Queens. It smelled permanently of damp concrete and the spicy cooking of the family living upstairs. The rent was $1,200 a month, and it took almost every penny he earned. Iolanthe Isadora was no longer a real estate mogul. He was a shift manager at Build It All, a large chain hardware store on Northern Boulevard. It was the only job he could get. His name was toxic in the corporate world. The article about his downfall had gone viral. LinkedIn had banned his profile due to mass reporting from angry people who sympathized with his ex-wife. No legitimate firm would hire the man who gave away a kingdom for a mistress. He put on his orange vest. It felt like a prison uniform. Iolanthe aisle 4. Clean up on aisle 4. His manager, a 22-year-old named Kyle, who had dropped out of community college, yelled across the store. "I'm on it, Kyle," Iolanthe muttered. He walked to aisle 4. A customer had dropped a gallon of white paint. It was everywhere. Iolanthe got the mop. As he scrubbed the floor, a woman with a shopping cart tried to squeeze past him. "Excuse me," she said impatiently. "Can you move? I'm in a hurry." Iolanthe looked up. He froze. It was Mrs. Higgins, the wife of one of his old investors. He had been to her house in the Hamptons. He had complimented her gardening. She looked at him, squinting. Iolanthe Isadora." Iolanthe panicked. He looked down, pulling his cap lower. "No, ma'am. Just Rick." "My God," she whispered, covering her mouth. "It is you. Frank told me you lost it all, but—" "A janitor. I'm a shift manager," Iolanthe said through gritted teeth. "Of course," she said, a pitying smile plastering her face. She reached into her purse and pulled out a $10 bill. "Here, for old time's sake. Buy yourself a coffee." She dropped the bill into the bucket of soapy paint water. "Whoops," she said. "Butterfingers." She walked away, not looking back. Iolanthe stared at the floating money. Rage boiled in his chest, hot and familiar. But it died quickly, replaced by a crushing exhaustion. He fished the wet bill out of the bucket, wiped it on his pants, and put it in his pocket. He needed that $10. It was his lunch money for the week. Lunch break. Iolanthe sat in the break room, eating a sandwich he had made from discount bologna. On the TV in the corner, a news program was playing, CNBC Market Watch. And in our top story today, the anchor announced. Isadora Heights, now rebranded as Phoenix Development, has posted record profits for the second quarter. Iolanthe stopped chewing. The screen changed to a live shot of a press conference. There she was, Jezebel. She looked radiant. She was wearing a cream-colored dress, standing at a podium in front of the Brooklyn skyscraper, his skyscraper which was now finished. It gleamed in the sunlight. "We believe in sustainable housing," Jezebel was saying into the microphone. "We are dedicating 20% of this building to affordable housing for single mothers. Profit is important, but community is essential." The crowd cheered. Flashbulbs popped. "Ms. van der Hoven," a reporter shouted, "what about your former husband, Iolanthe Isadora? Any comment on his whereabouts?" Iolanthe leaned forward, his heart pounding. Jezebel paused. She looked directly into the camera. For a second, Iolanthe felt like she could see him in the break room smelling of bleach and sweat. "Iolanthe Isadora is part of the past," Jezebel said smoothly. "And at Phoenix Development, we only look forward." "Next question." She dismissed him. She didn't hate him. She didn't pity him. He was just deleted. Iolanthe turned off the TV. He finished his sandwich. It tasted like ash. That evening, Iolanthe walked home in the rain. He didn't have an umbrella. As he fumbled with his keys at the basement door, a man stepped out of the shadows. Iolanthe flinched, dropping his keys. "I don't have any money." "I'm not here to rob you, Mr. Isadora," the man said. Iolanthe squinted. The man was wearing a trench coat and holding a briefcase. He looked like a lawyer. "Who are you?" "My name is Arthur Pendleton," the man said. Iolanthe's old lawyer, the one who had told him to sign the waivers. "Arthur." Iolanthe laughed bitterly. "Come to kick me too? Or are you here to sue me for unpaid legal fees because you can take the microwave, it's the only thing I own?" "I'm not here to sue you," Arthur said, looking uncomfortable. "I'm here because I was fired." Fired. Blackwood and Associates Jezebel's lawyers filed a complaint against me for malpractice. Apparently letting my client sign away his assets while intoxicated is a violation of the Bar Association's ethics. I lost my license, Iolanthe. "Join the club," Iolanthe said, unlocking the door. "Want a beer?" "It's warm." "No," Arthur said. "I'm here because I found something. When I was clearing out my files, I found a copy of the original trust deed for the Van der Hoven estate, Jezebel's trust." So. Arthur stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with desperation. Jezebel made a mistake. A tiny technical mistake. Iolanthe paused. "What kind of mistake?" "The declaration of separate assets you signed, the one that screwed you." Arthur pulled a damp document from his coat. It was notarized in New York, but according to the Van der Hoven family charter, which dates back to the 1920s, any change to the primary beneficiary's marital assets must be countersigned by the family patriarch in the Netherlands, her father. "And her father died 2 weeks before you signed that paper." Arthur grinned. "Which means the signature on the trust approval was dated post-mortem. It's invalid. The waiver is void, Iolanthe." Iolanthe felt a thumping in his ears. "Speak English, Arthur." "It means," Arthur whispered, "that legally you are still entitled to 50% of the appreciation of her assets during the marriage. You don't get the billions, but you get half of what Isadora Heights is worth now. Half of the Phoenix profits. How much? Maybe 50 million, maybe more." Iolanthe stared at the rain puddles. $50 million. It was a ticket out of this basement. It was a ticket back to the Pierre Hotel. Back to respect. "But we need to fight," Arthur said. "I can't practice law, but I know a guy who is hungry, and hates the Van der Hovens. We sue her. We drag her back to court. We expose the technicality. We blindside her." Iolanthe looked at his hands. They were rough, calloused from lifting lumber. He thought about Jezebel on the Tea-Fool. We only look forward. He thought about the way she looked at him in the boardroom. The total indifference. "She destroyed me," Iolanthe said softly. "She stole your life," Arthur urged. "Let's take it back." Iolanthe clenched his fist. The humiliation of the last 6 months burned in his gut. The mop, the orange vest, Mrs. Higgins's $10. He looked at Arthur. "Do it," Iolanthe said. "Burn it all down." The New York Supreme Court was packed. The press had caught wind of the zombie lawsuit, the disgraced ex-husband trying to claw back a fortune from the billionaire heiress on a technicality. Iolanthe sat at the plaintiff's table. He wasn't wearing an Armani suit today. He was wearing a Men's Warehouse suit he had bought on clearance. Next to him sat Victor Kane, a disheveled lawyer Arthur had dredged up from the bottom of the legal barrel. Arthur himself couldn't practice, so he sat in the gallery, sweating his eyes fixed on the potential payout. On the other side sat Jezebel. She looked serene, dressed in navy blue, flanked by 3 lawyers from Blackwood and Associates, who looked like they cost more per hour than Iolanthe had earned in the last 6 months. "Your Honor!" Victor Kane bellowed, waving the damp document Arthur had found. "The evidence is irrefutable. The declaration of separate assets requires the signature of the Van der Hoven patriarch. The signature is dated October the 14th. Henrik van der Hoven died on October 1st. Dead men don't sign contracts. The waiver is void. My client is entitled to 50% of all marital assets acquired during the union." The judge, an elderly man with thick glasses, examined the paper. He looked at Jezebel's team. "Counsel, this does appear to be a discrepancy." Iolanthe's heart hammered against his ribs. It was working. He looked at Jezebel. He expected to see fear. He wanted to see the cracks in her porcelain mask. But Jezebel was just writing in a notebook. Her lead attorney, a sharp woman named Eleanor Vance, stood up. "Your Honor, we do not dispute the dates." The courtroom gasped. Iolanthe felt a surge of adrenaline. "They admitted it, however," Vance continued. "We dispute the plaintiff's understanding of the Van der Hoven family charter." She turned to the gallery. "We call our first and only witness, Mrs. Martha van der Hoven." The doors opened. An elegant elderly woman in a wheelchair was wheeled in. It was Jezebel's mother. Iolanthe remembered her as a quiet woman he had met once at a funeral. He thought she was just a senile grandmother. Martha took the stand. "Mrs. van der Hoven," Vance asked, "who became the patriarch, the head of the estate upon your husband's death?" "I did," Martha said, her voice clear and strong, "until my daughter turned 25. And on October 14th, the date of this document, who signed the waiver authorization?" "I did," Martha said. "I signed it as the executor of the estate, holding the power of the patriarch. My husband was dead, yes, but the authority was mine." Victor Kane slammed his hand on the table. "Objection. The signature says H. van der Hoven." "Yes," Martha smiled sweetly. "My name is Helena Martha van der Hoven. I go by Martha, but I sign with my legal initial, H." Silence descended on the courtroom. The loophole wasn't a loophole. It was a misunderstanding of a middle name. Arthur in the gallery put his head in his hands. The $50 million evaporated instantly. "Case dismissed," the judge began to say. "Wait." Jezebel stood up. Your Honor, may I address the plaintiff? The judge paused. Make it quick, Ms. van der Hoven. Jezebel walked across the aisle. She stopped 5 feet from Iolanthe. She smelled of rain and expensive sandalwood. You thought you caught me, she said softly, only for him to hear. You thought I was sloppy. I just wanted what was fair, Iolanthe choked out, his eyes burning with the humiliation of defeat. I helped build that company, and that is why I'm going to make you an offer, Jezebel said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick red folder. You can leave here with nothing, Iolanthe. You can go back to your basement and your mop, or you can open this folder. Iolanthe looked at the folder. What is it? A check. Better, Jezebel said. It's a legacy. Iolanthe opened the folder. It wasn't a check. It was a stack of engineering reports, structural analysis reports. He scanned the first page. His blood ran cold. Project, the Isadora Bridge Complex. 2018. Status, critical structural failure, imminent. Cause, substandard concrete usage authorized by CEO Iolanthe Isadora to cut costs. You remember the bridge complex? Jezebel whispered. You saved $2 million by switching concrete suppliers. You bought the cheap stuff. I found out about it during the audit last month. Iolanthe was trembling. I didn't think it would matter. The concrete is cracking, Iolanthe. Jezebel said, her voice hard as steel. It's going to crumble within a year. There are 300 families living in that building. Why are you showing me this? Iolanthe hissed. Turn me in. Send me to jail. I could, Jezebel said, but that would destroy the company's reputation, and those families would lose their homes while the city evacuates them. I don't want a scandal. I want a solution. She pointed to a contract in the back of the folder. I have established a private construction firm under a generic name. It has a budget of $5 million, my personal money. The sole purpose of this firm is to reinforce the Isadora Bridge Complex. It needs a project manager who knows where the bodies are buried, someone who knows exactly where the cheap concrete was poured. Iolanthe looked up at her. You want me to fix it? I want you to work, Jezebel said. Hard work, dirty work. You will be paid a foreman's wage, $60,000 a year. You will live on site in a trailer. You will not be the CEO. You will be the guy in the hard hat, sweating in the dust. You will fix every crack you caused. And if you finish the job, if you save those families, then and only then will I tear up this report. She leaned in closer. This is your redemption, Iolanthe. You don't get the money. You don't get the fame. You get to save your soul. Do we have a deal? Iolanthe looked at the report. He looked at Arthur, who was signaling him to run. He looked at the judge, who was watching curiously. Then he looked at his hands, the hands that had signed the divorce papers, the hands that had taken the bribes. He picked up the pen. He didn't sign the lawsuit appeal. He signed the employment contract. I'll do it, Iolanthe whispered. Jezebel nodded once. She didn't smile. She turned to the judge. We are finished here, Your Honor. She walked out of the courtroom. She didn't look back. 3 years later. The sun was setting over the Isadora Bridge Complex in New Jersey. The scaffolding was finally coming down. The building looked new, reinforced with steel and high-grade concrete. Iolanthe Isadora sat on the steps of a small construction trailer. He was thinner now. His skin was tanned and weathered. His hair was grey, no longer dyed. He wore work boots that were covered in dust. He took a sip of cold water from a thermos. His muscles ached, but it was a good ache. The ache of honest labor. A black town car pulled up to the curb. Iolanthe didn't stand up. He knew who it was. The window rolled down. Jezebel sat in the back. She looked older too, but beautiful. "It's finished," Iolanthe said, gesturing to the building. "Passed inspection this morning. Structural integrity is 100%. "I know," Jezebel said. "I saw the report." She reached out of the window and dropped the red folder, the evidence of his crime, into a trash can on the curb. "You're clear, Iolanthe," she said. "The company is dissolved. You're free to go. You can find another job." Iolanthe looked at the trash can, then back at the building. A little girl was running out of the front door, laughing, chasing a ball. If he hadn't fixed the foundation, that building might have collapsed on her. "I think I'll stick to construction," Iolanthe said quietly. "I'm good at fixing things." "Yes," Jezebel said. A small, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time in years. "You finally are." "Jezebel," Iolanthe asked. "Yes, I'm sorry. For everything." Jezebel paused. She looked at him not with love, but with peace. "I know, Iolanthe. Goodbye." The window rolled up. The car drove away, disappearing into the city lights. Iolanthe sat on the steps for a long time. He had no millions. He had no penthouse. He had no wife. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't empty. He stood up, picked up his hard hat, and walked toward the sunset. He had work to do. Iolanthe Isadora chased the glitz, the glamour, and the instant gratification, only to find that the most expensive things in life, loyalty, integrity, and love, cannot be bought, and once sold, can rarely be bought back. He lost $1 billion, but in the dust of a construction site, he might have finally found himself. What do you think? Did Iolanthe deserve a second chance, or should Jezebel have sent him to jail? Was his punishment of 3 years of hard labor enough to pay for his betrayal? Let me know in the comments below. Type Team Justice if you think he got off too easy, or Team Redemption if you think he learned his lesson. If you enjoyed this story of twists, karma, and high-stakes revenge, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next scandal. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you step on your way up. They might be the only ones catching you on your way down.